budget workshop. Is that what we're doing first, correct?
Yes.
To order, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Bates.
Chairman Booth, thank you, Board, for your opportunity this afternoon to come back together and talk about our proposed budget as we move into the new year. As you know, we started with the workshop in February.
Excuse me,
We had a
Mr.
workshop.
Soto just showed up.
We had a workshop in May. You've had an opportunity to meet individually with staff to talk about specific questions that you may have or input that you may have. And we feel like where we are today is the best budget that we can put together at this moment with the information that we have, the goals that you've set before us, and the direction that we want to try to move forward with. So I will turn it over to Ms. Graber and Mr. Gonzalez to go over the new information with you. Because so much of what's in the book has not changed, we're going to try to go through it reasonably quickly, but please do interrupt if you have questions or comments. We do have page numbers so that we can reference specific pages, although some are on the side, some are on the bottom, to be able to get you where we are, and you can get us to where anything you need us to look at. Okay?
All right. So if we flip to page I-2, just the budget timeline, we'll start there. And as Dr. Pace just mentioned, we have previously gone over a lot of this information. Most recently, back on May 15th, we had our last workshop to talk about the initial general and capital funds, and those are the two funds we're talking about again today. Since that last workshop, we have met with each of you individually to get some of your feedback, and we'll answer some of the questions that came up. And now today we're here at June 5th for the board workshop on general and capital. While we're on the timeline, did just want to point out a couple of things. The property appraiser will be certifying the taxable value by July 1. So we did receive an estimate from them, which we've gone ahead and included in here. However, this budget is based on the first calculation, the conference report, which does not have that certified value in there yet. So that's one thing that will change when we get the second FEFP calculation in July from DOE. And you're all familiar with that process. The next dates I just want to confirm and bring to your attention is we will be doing the tentative budget presentation on all funds on July 10th. And then the first public hearing is scheduled for July 31st, and the second public hearing is scheduled for September 11th, when we'll approve the final budget and millage rates. The next couple of pages, we can go ahead and kind of flip past just the budget conventions. Nothing significant's changed there from prior years. And then,
For the sake of it, what page number are you on?
okay, go ahead and flip to page I-6 is the initial FTE projections.
Got it, thank you.
Again, we've gone over this previously. If you go ahead and flip to the second page under the totals, you'll see the increase from the current year of 3,158 FTE. That is slightly higher than our original projection because our fourth calc numbers from our February count were down slightly from projection, down about 250 FTE, and the majority of that was in the charter schools.
Who wants to bet
So
we're
there
over
wasn't a big
70,000?
funding impact.
Who wants to bet we're over 70,000 by the time school opens? Is it 69,394?
I wouldn't take that bet.
I'm guessing that this. I appreciate the calculation. I'm guessing we're going to make it over 70,000 by August.
Very possible.
These numbers were updated, however, to reflect the fact that the Creative Inspiration School has asked for another planning year. So those 80 FTE were added to the undistributed at this point in time. As we move forward, we'll decide where the charter school enrollment actually falls.
And where we see those students show up in August. Next page is just the graphical representation of our FTE growth over the years, and that includes the same projection for next year. Page I-9, as I mentioned, we did receive the estimate for taxable value from the property appraiser. So we have a copy of that here, which is slightly higher than what was used in the FEFP calculation. So we will expect to see a little bit more in local revenue generated when we get the second calc.
So we're coming back up. That's good.
Yeah, going back up. Again, this next page, the graph you've seen before. And we'll just point out the RLE rate due to the rollback that is going down from 4.501 to 4.179. It's the at the very top of that page in the right-hand
Just for fun,
corner.
are you making?
To the very top, you may have to take the
Yeah,
clip
it's
off
not-
to be able to see it
Yeah.
well.
And if you go to the next page,
So
it's
what is
on
the
there as well.
rollback, what is the rollback costing us then?
So, haven't calculated that per se.
Sir, would you do something for me, and I think Mr. Thacker would probably like it as well. Could you calculate it just for this year, but could you also go back to 2009 and say, what if we were still at 5.165, what it would be? What the loss to the district is on that? Just so we have that number at our fingertips. And that, did they start before then, or it was right around that time when they started that, right?
No, no, no,
It was
was
after
actually
that.
after
when-
that.
It's, yeah.
That was probably
Yeah, 'cause
back
you
in-
see
I
it
thought it
went,
was about, it was when Scott came in, right, which would have been 10?
09, 10, that's exactly.
well, it went up in 13, 14. I think it was after that,
Okay.
because it was just in the last couple of years that policy has really started.
It's really been the legislative policy, more so I think even than the governor's policy,
Oh, thanks.
to keep that rollback rate, or to, to hold those local property
So it
values.
just,
Well,
I guess, go
no
back
matter where it
to
is. we need-
13,
I'd like to know.
14, when they started, whenever. Just, and then I see now that's where the numbers have really declined quite a bit. So maybe 20, 13, 14. Whenever you find out that started,
That
just by
policy
looking at the
started.
trend here, I can see that it was probably, like you said, 13, 14.
Well, and we've talked about this before, I'd like to see how we lined up the total property value deflation when everything went bad versus the recovery. So how much, compared to other counties, so how are we being adversely impacted by this, by the amount of drop that we had and not being allowed to recover?
Because really the drop was, the lowest point
Yeah.
was in 12-13.
And we're not allowed to recover from that, basically.
Correct.
So that's what I want to see if our drop was disproportionately more than a lot of other districts, which I think it was. I think that, I don't know that. And then, because if it was, we're being adversely impacted.
We will pull back. All right, next page, I-11 is the FEFB comparison from our current fourth calculation this year to next year's projection. Again, we talked about the FTE growth, so that's currently at 4.77%, projection for increase next year. The required local effort millage rollback on line 15 we just discussed.
What's DOE gonna fund out of the 4.47%?
That's what's projected for the funding increase.
That's the projected.
Yeah.
That's not the projected growth number that then they always take down and, correct?
The really new set of numbers here are in the fourth calculation. We did not have that when we met in June. We've gotten it since then, and so we've updated those exact numbers. But the conference report is the original conference report.
Yeah, the conference report is the projection, so the 69,394
That's
is our
that's
FTE
almost,
projection.
that's pretty much the actual numbers for the start of school next year.
Based on current enrollment, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So I've got a question. The 4.77% we're going to increase, what is the percentile increase over healthcare costs?
Our projection is 8%, is what's been baked
So
into our
basically,
projections.
so essentially what we have now based on the funding we get is unsustainable.
That would be correct.
Thank you.
Base student allocation, as you know, is going up 47 cents per FTE. I did calculate the loss from the district cost differential. Due to that being below 1.0, that is going to cost us $4.2 million out of next year's budget from that DCD impact. And then
We know we don't get that next year?
that's how much we're losing by our DCD being .9868
Instead of 1.
instead of 1.0.
I got a question for you, Dr. Harris. Because of how we're funded, FTE, if a child is at a desk, we're going to get funding for that little boy or little girl. And now that school choice is kind of like gone on steroids relative to what the legislature's allowed. Should we, and does it make any sense to try to attract more students from out of county? That we get more funding. I mean, for every student we get X number of dollars for. I mean, I don't know if that would make sense or not financially for us.
We have accepted students from out of county in spaces that we.
I didn't say accept.
We have not actively recruited students from outside of the
Is
county.
that something that would make financial sense, I guess, is the real question. I think we can educate any student who comes to us. That's my opinion. I don't care where they're coming from. Does it make financial, I'm not worried about the other districts think. Does it make financial sense for us to do it, capture those dollars and capture those?
Problem is, we're almost not getting enough per student to educate them.
And the challenge always remains capacity. Really and truly, if you look, other than on the west side, in the depths of Poinciana, we don't have the extra seats to spare. So but we have aggressively marketed choice regardless, across the county.
But to your point, in Poinciana, so have we done any recruitment in North Polk County for those empty seats we have?
We have not gone into North Polk. We do accept students who
I
apply.
understand.
And we have a number who are coming in to
I
some of
understand
those
the difference.
programs. Yeah.
So do we want to consider that to fill those student stations?
We'll certainly continue to explore their options based on the direction of the board. Right now, we're working really hard to educate the ones we have as best we can.
And I'm not suggesting
Right.
we do, I'm looking, you tell me we have student stations, and so I don't know, again, I'm just looking at it and Clarence, I understand, from a financial perspective, you could theoretically say for every student you get, you're that much further behind financially, but I can't look at it that way. I gotta look at it where we are. If I get empty student stations, every day that seat's empty, there's FTE not coming.
Yeah. One of the things I would point out to the board, because I think we're going to have some additional discussion about it potentially later on, is this year that we received the $5.3 million in compression that not all districts did because our per student funding was lower than the state average. Still left us at 66 out of 67 in terms of per student funding, but it did bring us up to a degree. Exactly. If you take that 4.2 that we lost from the DCD, the 5.3 makes it up a little bit to the good. But that's another reason, I think, for us to consider that as a potential advocacy point as we move forward with legislative priorities. We want funding to continue to be attached to that formula, I would think, but that's up to the board to help prioritize.
Well, as long as you're bringing that up, Dr. Pace, I asked Sarah to make this for me. Here, this is for each one of the board members, can have one of these. There's a second page also, hang on. As we're going to FSBA and we're talking to legislators, these are the counties. This is non-recurring revenue, if I'm correct. Is there a second page to this?
I think it's back to back, Mr. Riddle. And if you'll give me a copy
Oh.
for Tanya for the record, please.
Yeah, Tanya actually made it.
Okay, great.
Y'all got a back? Oh, it's on the back, okay. These counties, they got money. A lot of board members in those counties probably aren't even aware of the money they got. For instance, Hillsborough got money. Broward got money. Big districts are getting money. And those big districts are the ones that will help carry us legislatively. So we may want to, Duval, there's revenue coming that's non-recurring revenue that Dr. Pace was alluding to, that Sarah went over with me. And we want to get this to recur, is what it comes down to. Because if it does recur, then we can tie it to wages or other things if we know it's recurring. We can't right now because we're responsible to tie a wage to something we don't continue to get. So I know, Clarence, you mentioned you're going to FSBA. I'm going to FSBA. These are conversations, you get with a Broward County school board member. Obviously, they've got, based on numbers, a lot more legislative clout than Osceola does, and we got maybe 4 or 5, well, they got 20. Similar Hillsborough, et cetera. So just want to be mindful of this. Sarah, is there anything, or Dr. Pace, anything you want to add relative to this?
I'll just add, I did look at, since we're talking about how this is designed to offset some of the impact of the DCD, I did look, and it was interesting to see that there are 5 districts that are benefiting from the DCD formula as well as benefiting from this. So those may be districts to look at as well.
But you look at Orange. Orange doesn't need DCD. Broward doesn't, but yet they're on this list. They want to keep getting that money.
And they're below the average total per student funding.
It's nice when you've got partners like that to lobby for something with you. Just want to make everybody aware of that. Thanks for getting this for me, Sarah.
You're welcome. And I will mention, our human calculator over here, Mr. Gonzalez, just calculated for us the impact of the rollback rate. It was 8.2?
8.3 million.
8.3 million for this 1 year. The other pieces of the FEFP formula for this year, as we've discussed before, while we're going up about 2% in total, the majority of that is tied up in specific categoricals, specific restricted categoricals, in addition to the funding compression. So line 28, the safe schools, you see that's gone up 2.3 million, and that is the money that's specifically going towards school resource officers, the additional school resource officers that we'll be adding. And then line 40 is the mental health allocation, so that's an additional 1.6 million.
I want to go back to school resource officers.
Which line item is that, the resource officers?
Line 28
I
is the
see.
safe schools.
I don't know if it's
allocation.
passed or it's pending. Supposedly there's a bill that allows retired law enforcement officers to come back as SROs because the law enforcement statewide can't fill all their jobs. I mean, every police department, sheriff's office. Did that pass or is that coming next session? Does anyone have any clue about that? Don't all jump up at once.
I do know that our local law enforcement agencies are recruiting
Right,
retirees.
right.
And they're able to hire them based on certain conditions. I don't think they can come back right away, but they're looking to fill them in some of the 10-month positions, so they work the teacher calendar. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but
Well,
there are some provisions that allow them to do that.
Well, Commissioner Hawkins and I, we were at a meeting where somebody cornered both of us. Well, it just happened, Fred was there. And so I pulled Fred over. And he was the one who shared that with me, and I wasn't aware that might be something pending next session. Okay, thank you.
Last thing I just wanted to mention is, although it's a small amount, line 46, you'll see that there was a slight proration in the fourth calculation in the current year. So losing 47,000 due to that.
I'm so surprised the direction it's in.
Okay. Again, next page, I-12, just the graphs that you're used to seeing about our total FEFP funding, and then the slower increase when you do it on a per student basis. Updated for the next year. Our FEFP components, again, we can kind of flip through these next few pages, just the narrative explanations. Numbers have been updated, but again, no new, nothing new in this area, just informational. So if you want to go ahead and flip all the way to the general fund, page 1-2 is the general fund budget summary. This is the one-page budget for the operating fund. And we'll dig into some of the details, but we're just going to point out down under appropriations. Obviously, the charter school money comes right off the top for us. And then when you add the salaries and benefits in, over 82% of our total operating budget is going to salaries and benefits and the charter schools. So, as we all know, that's where the majority of the funding goes.
McKay scholarships, how many students do we, I know how many students are actually getting McKays?
It's on that, if you go back to that page, I-11.
As of right now, we have 966 FTE.
So it's 966 divided by 6.3, 6.4 million.
So the entire share of the funding they generate gets passed through.
Yeah. 66 and change.
And then down on line 41, you'll see the projected operating surplus for next year's budget is just over $500,000. Flipping to the next page, 1-3 is the long-range forecast. Again, you'll see that $500,000 surplus represented in line 5 under the 18-19 year. And also the impact of that budget on our total unassigned fund balance percentage at the bottom will be driving that down to 8.4%. So again, same story as we continue to grow.
I say it about every time, I'm very worried about that percentage. creeping down.
So that's
Based on our
something
growth.
we need to think about as we move forward is, you know, how can we build that unassigned fund balance back up in relation to our growth. The numbers that are reflected in the out years right now, the increase in FEFP per student, we've done this long-range budget based on a $100 increase per student, what the legislature's done for the last 2 years. Obviously, we don't know what that will be moving forward, but that's what this is based on right now. We've also factored in 3% student growth. We know we're a little higher than that this past year and probably next year as well, but over the last several years, on average, that was kind of where we were standing. So that may increase a little bit more. And then the other thing is that while you'll see some larger surpluses in those out years, this does not factor in any kind of salary increase, any new programs or initiatives, or any cost savings that, you know, may come as a result of our planning for the next few years. Moving on to the line items, again, we discussed this at the previous workshop. Some of you had a few questions about a few of them, so I just wanted to highlight. Line 1, the elevation software. That is a progress monitoring tool for our ELL students, and that we are hoping that when we do eventually receive the federal funding for those students that were displaced from the hurricanes, that funding can go to reimburse us for this cost. New line items, line 7, the Let's Talk Online service platform. Again, we've discussed that before, a new way for our community to submit their questions and concerns to us. There was a question about the Administrators Academy line item. We have some thoughts on how we want to revamp that program for next year. Line 20, the Administrators Academy. And we also use various donations and other funding sources to support
I have
that.
a question. I'm looking at one of the line items here, number 41, graduations. Would ESPN, would Disney give us that facility for less than what Silver Spurs is charging us?
I doubt it for 3 days.
It's not Silver Spurs, by the way.
It's the county.
It's the county.
Oh, okay. Would
And I
ESPN?
was able to negotiate a contract with OHP this year so that we have 3 years of guaranteed rates. Because as we looked at it over the last 5 to 6 years, it had been escalating at a pretty rapid amount. So they've agreed to hold it constant and keep the level of service constant for the next 3 years.
Okay.
3 days, the same 3 days that we've had.
And I think they do. I think it's a great job, and I'm glad we're doing it. I guess, has anybody seen what ESPN would charge us if we use their?
We have not. I just know that
Years
they
ago,
are
we-
absolutely stacked with the sporting events, AAU and those types of things.
I know years ago we used ESPN. They did a nice job. I don't know, I'm not saying one is better or worse than another, but if you can save a few bucks, you can save.
I know I went out to the parks on Sunday after graduations on Saturday, and they had some huge event going in there. I think it was cheerleading.
Well, they
So I'm
all-
guessing it was there for the weekend.
Well, they knew Dr. Pace was coming. That's why they were so crowded.
I was glad the traffic was going that way and not to see Mickey Mouse.
All right, if we flip to the next page, line 68, supplemental safe schools. You know, we discussed that the safe schools allocation was increased to add the additional SROs. Based on our cost share with our law enforcement agencies, we're also adding mutual link software program and a coordinator to help us service the charter schools, which is a requirement. We are allocating an additional $500,000 there in addition to the funding that we're receiving through the safe schools allocation.
If I could remind the board, the mutual link software is designed to aid with the communication while we continue to work toward what we can do with the radio communication within those buildings. But this will allow anybody in the building with an app on their phone to notify and directly plug into law enforcement, emergency management across the agencies.
Okay, so that still doesn't necessarily enable a peace officer, if they're in the building, to use their radio, though?
If they have a cell phone, they can log right into ours. It does not allow us to plug into all of the radio systems.
I was, and I appreciate what we're doing, but I gotta believe we still have repeaters, and maybe we don't not bite it all in one chunk.
And we're continuing to work toward that. The cost for Tahopeka High School is $250,000.
Oh, I know, it's
One school.
I know, it's 200,000 plus per school. I'm fully aware how much it is. But at the same time, I don't know.
Law enforcement is very on board with the mutual link application.
I know,
All three
they brought
agencies.
it to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pete Gauntlet did, I remember. Okay, if they're good with it, then I'm good with it. Okay.
Okay, for Mr. Weissayer just walked in, we're going through the line items, we're actually on page 1-5.
Thank you.
Line 90, the startup supplies for new schools, I just wanted to point out that that is a new item for this year, since we haven't opened a new school in many, many years. So that is for Tahopeka and Neo City, to assist with all of their startup supplies that aren't part of the FF&E budget.
And Neo City will also appear again next year because they're really going to open next year.
Neo City doesn't need any money, right?
Some might come in.
That's why I said it.
Spending all the money on the Christmas
Saw that
haircuts.
Line 105, legal fees. We have seen that go down substantially since Mr. Kruppenbacher came on board.
Quality may drop too.
But this would also includes the legal fees that we will have incurred or are incurring as a result of impasse, above and beyond what we had anticipated for the year. So we have seen a significant improvement.
Do we
even
know
with
what
that
the
additional
impasse
expense.
cost is?
Ballpark.
Ballpark?
I've not seen bills as of yet.
Couple days worth of an additional.
Yeah, when we're done, I'd like.
How much money came out of the pool for this?
We'll absolutely have an accounting
Report
for the
back.
board for that.
The next page, is there anything else on there? Line 115 for recruitment. Had a conversation with one of you about if there's anything else we need in terms of recruitment. We have added some additional dollars there, which will be offset by lapse though. We're looking at a program, and then Dr. Hayes, I don't know if you want to explain that further, but to try and recruit some additional teachers who are not citizens.
We are looking at a visa sponsorship program. It was used successfully in Orange County last year. There's very little risk to the district. The company does the screening, provides the benefits, and they are highly stacked in terms of your math, science teachers that we couldn't necessarily be able to find.
I know we have one awesome principal trying to get a Chinese teacher.
And we are aware of that.
What do they do for benefits? What do they do for health insurance?
The company provides them.
I don't think.
So
it
that
needs
our
to
costs, a
anymore.
lot of them are for the actual sponsorship of the visas are offset, and our work with this company are offset by the fact that we're not having to pay retirement benefits for the first 5 years that they're here. So it's basically like a 5-year deal that we can keep them.
But they don't have green card.
No, I don't know if any other board member brought it up, but that was one of the things I brought up in my meetings. I know, Sarah, with you, and just, but I know it's not an Osceola problem. It's a problem, maybe not just statewide, but nationwide, but I certainly want to be on top of it. If we need to add more into recruiting, then certainly it's something we ought to look into.
And we're continuing to look at different things that we can do. We have another job fair planned next week. We're going to be doing some virtual kinds of job fair opportunities, a couple of more during the summer. And we're really amping up the work that we're doing through LinkedIn. And then this is a second option that we believe we just now have to open our eyes to trying.
And Mr. Wheeler, I know you also had the question about, since those employees would be receiving their benefits through the other company, could they attend the health center? That would be up to us. We could add them to the opt-in list if we wanted to give them that ability.
Okay.
All right. And a couple other questions on the athletic coaching supplement line item, line 120. We saw an increase there. We are continuing to dig into that a little bit further, but this is specifically related to supplements for coaches that are not our employees. So if they're an employee of the district, then that's getting charged through payroll. This line item is specifically for coaches serving in that capacity that are not currently on our payroll otherwise.
Yeah, and I just wanted some explanation of who and what that is, just so I understand. Not necessarily an issue with it, just want to understand it more. I know we had some conversations previously about some of those supplement opportunities. I just want to make sure I'm aligning my thoughts on what I'm looking at here.
You know, a year ago, we added some supplements in particular for the middle school sports programs that we wanted to do in the middle school IDs. These are not any additional supplemental positions. This is just, we're seeing more of an increase of community-based coaches as opposed to employees who want these particular jobs. But by contract, they're offered to employees first.
And then line 125, the pool rental and heating. I know, Mr. Reichsteiger, you also had a question about that. We have worked out the deal with the Point Santa High School pool.
Is everything okay with the YMCA pool also?
To the best of our knowledge, all those agreements are in place. Yep.
Okay. But the funding that we're putting in the budget covers that as well? Because I know there's been conversation in the past about the heating costs for the OHS swim team, dive, and some of those other things, and making sure there's enough money. That's why I brought it up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is based on the new contracts.
Okay.
Okay, and that was all I had on line items unless anybody had any additional questions. The next page goes into our FAI budget. Again, you've seen this previously, so I don't believe there were any questions in this area. Flipping to page 1-9, also our reading allocation budget, which you've seen previously as well. And then moving on to the capital fund. Just wanted to point out on page 2-3 is our capacity page with our impact fees. Nothing's changed since our last workshop, although I just do want to reiterate, if you look at the bottom line for the 18-19 year, that ending restricted fund balance of $4.7 million, that is just about as low as we want to go to still be real safe with our impact fee collections and making sure that we're not getting ahead of ourselves in terms of building without the dollars really in the bank. We have had a little bit of a delay in collections due to the county's software upgrade, which we talked about previously as well. So
Have
we
they
are going
fixed that now?
to continue. They're still in the
That is not
process.
No.
Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, Dr. Pace and I met with the county manager and some of his team. That is not fixed. They identified they are fixing it. A week is not going by, we're not making contact and say, where is it? So we're told it's being fixed. And it's the
We are
only
still awaiting some collections going back to February. So it just makes it's making it a little bit harder for us to project, what will we really be receiving and where are we really at with our collections.
Do they have a timeline?
It was my perception they had implemented something, and as opposed to running parallel systems, they implemented something that's caused them an unknown, and they did not have a timeline. I think they originally were talking to us about the end of May. We're into June now, so I don't have a lot of confidence to tell you there's a particular time that they've set that this is fixed by. Dr. Pace, did you?
The other point of emphasis that we had in our discussions with the county manager and the staff was the transition period as we move into the new impact fees on August the 1st. Because not only are we moving into a new set of impact fees, if you remember, the county also wanted to change the point of collection from CO to permit issuance. And so we're going to have a lot of permits that have been issued in the rush to avoid some mobility fees and impact fees in these last couple of months during this implementation of the new system when things haven't gone smoothly, that are still pending waiting of impact fees for CO that we want to make sure don't get lost in the transition. So we're continuing to monitor that carefully, even though it's remotely, and engage in that conversation to make sure that we're not left holding the bag.
There is a corollary to that that's developed, and that is, under the existing ordinance, if you pay and you pull your impact fee, and you don't move forward, you get a refund. So I have a meeting to talk with the county about recommending that we go to, there's no refund once you pull a permit for a school impact fee. I'm not talking, because the minute those impact fees comes in, that's part of budgeting for you planning to build facilities and continue to deal with the growth. So if you knock it out and refund it, you can really cause a domino within the funding. So we've got to straighten that out.
Well, so I guess the question becomes then, at what point is it determined they're not moving forward? 60 days without an inspection, 90 days, it's very innocuous.
My particular view is you pay the permit, you pull the permit, part of why you're paying it, you've caused the work to have that permit issued, you don't get it back.
Right.
That's to me the cleanest thing. If you're paying your impact fees, now, they're of value to you, because if you sell the property, you can transfer the impact fees.
Right, that's the impact fee, right.
Or if you ultimately build, or you gotta come up with, don't give us we actually talked last Thursday about, don't give us the impact fees to the COs at pull, because but we want it with interest. The problem is, if you give us and you don't have some sort of date, like if you don't act within 90 days, they're forfeited. I don't know the answer at this point. I just know that it can't be, you can just get them back at some point, because it puts at least your planning ability in a whole
Never be
different
able to spend
ballgame.
And you've got to have somebody monitor that also. Once you get it, we got to give it back. So I guess the onus should be on the county, not us.
In our meeting last Thursday, Kenley, my opinion was, tell them to just transfer them over like they normally do with interest on COs, so there's no issue, because you can't have it the way it is. It's one of the open-ended things we've got to resolve.
You can't buy an airline ticket and get a refund. Well, I should be able to do this and get a refund.
No.
To your point, though, you would put a time parameter on that. You can't get a refund after X period of time, or are you just saying period?
I personally, I understand both viewpoints from the people that are paying it, saying there's some reasonable time frame, but at that point, when those dollars are transferred and we're earning interest, you're going to have to account that those dollars can't be planned for until that date expires.
How often is the occurrence where there's a refund?
Right now, we don't do refunds at all, that come through us.
Yeah,
Now,
they
I
go
don't know if
through
the
the county.
county is doing anything before it gets to us.
Where it really pops up, I sort of popped up in ours, was when you had the last economic downturn, and things just shut down. So it's unlikely you're going to see a lot of refunds, but it's saying, okay, guys, what's a sound plan that Dr. Pace and her team can come to you and say, these dollars are allocated and they're here. And, okay, we have these dollars, but they can't be released yet because permits haven't been acted on. It's sort of at what point does the county decide the permit has been acted on? I mean, if you pull the permits and you're putting in the road infrastructure, does that, I don't know the answer. We've got to sit with them and work it through, Tim.
Yeah, my only hesitation would be, I would want to be sensitive to the private sector and the money that belongs to the
There's a
individuals.
reasonable approach to
There
this.
is, and I
don't
just
know
want to
what it
make sure
is.
that we find what that is. I certainly agree that it's a disservice to the school district if we're counting on certain revenue coming in. We have that money, we're trying to plan to spend that money, and then all of a sudden there's a big
Right,
pullback
so
on it.
it's, guys,
But
what
there
we're-
also are times where in the development community, you might say, well, I'm going to go down this road, plans change, and then you go, well, I'm not able to right now. So there has to be some mechanism in there to, we say, within 120 days or within 6 months, it's refundable if that's the
Exactly.
case, and define what that is.
And I want-
Because let's be honest, they're paying for an impact at that point they're not creating. Although you are correct that if the impact fees are paid, then it is a transferable value that I can valuate into the real estate piece. But I just want to find the right answer to that. And
I had to deal with this with Orange when we came up with the whole capacity enhancement thing. You just got to get the county in the room and say, okay, guys, what works here to keep the viability of the community?
How long does it take
And
for the county to make the transfer?
The minute you pay, you're screwed.
Right.
When the county collects the impact fee and the school district receives it?
Right now, they're due to us by the 10th of the following month.
That's enough
I
time
don't think
for a
that's changed
refund?
in the new ordinance.
If anything, the refunds are coming
No,
from the
no,
county
I-
side, right?
We haven't received one since the 10th of
I'll
January.
be candid, I think you kind of gotta,
We have
we
received
gotta
some
really
now.
sit and talk with the county on what they see, because you've got,
They don't have
you got residential, and you got residential, you got.
It's just the
different-
first
and
time
they've
I've
got
got an
their
issue
other
of this
impact
type.
fees.
Have you heard of
Have I what, I'm sorry?
of issue of this type? A refund issue? This is the first time?
No, because
Yeah.
normally, like in the
You haven't
non-educated.
heard of it?
No,
Yeah,
normally,
so-
because when the property owner gets it, it's a value.
That's
And it
understood, but if
goes.
they're getting refunds before we even see it, I mean,
I wouldn't care if they get a refund before she gets, the problem is, once she gets the money.
yeah, but we have,
You
but we already
can't
have.
have us do it.
Yeah, we're not gonna change that.
That's what I'm saying.
We're not considering changing that policy. But basically, if there is a refund to be, they have a small window with the county, something that we wouldn't even be
Yeah,
aware
I
of.
mean, county, candidly, the saving thing is county, when they're paid, accrue interest for us, but don't transfer it to us till when you transfer, it's cleared to go.
Okay.
Because we don't want somebody knocking on our door saying, send us back $500,000.
So they'd be out of luck with the way that as we stand here right now.
My opinion, for the benefit of the board and the staff, is, my only point is I want to find what the fair, reasonable solution to this is, to where no one side of this equation is adversely affected beyond what they should be. And if dollars are owed to the school district, then they need to be paid, but at the same time, we need to be mindful of the fact that this is someone's hard-earned money that they're paying for a development, whether it's a small one home or 1,000 homes, it's irrelevant. We just want to be mindful that we're fiduciaries of that, and I just don't want to take advantage of the position that we have to be able to and find the right answer to it. That's all I care about.
Yeah, I know.
But I thought I heard Ricky too, you said we're behind on collections right now because of waiting on some cleanup from the county side.
Yeah, their computer system.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was, I think, part of what, I think, Rhonda, you and I even talked about at some point, separate conversation, but some of the challenges with the technology shift over at the county. Yeah, okay.
So as I mentioned, nothing else has changed on the capacity side. Still, you all are familiar with the new school plans and the next 5-year budget. And then on non-capacity, the only things that have changed since the last version you saw, we did update the capital outlay tax revenue projection for the new estimate we received from the property appraiser. So a slight bump there in our revenue projections. We had mentioned previously the increase to the bus replacement budget. So we are going to try and make a little bit of extra progress there on our replacement cycles. And the one thing that we've added, we talked at the last workshop about the need to do some classroom space reconfigurations next summer to get some additional classroom space and student stations. We've added that in here. We'll be using capital outlay tax to fund that because we won't have enough impact fees at the time. So normally, since that's an increase in student stations, we would want to use impact fees to fund that. But because we are going to be pretty tight on our impact fee budget next year, we're going to go ahead and fund that out of our capital outlay tax. And again,
Aren't we gonna double dip for a while here then? Sort of, where they're gonna pay at permitting, and then we're still gonna be collecting on the ones that are paying at CO, so aren't we gonna have a,
We want to be mindful that nobody's collected on twice, but that also nobody gets away without paying at some
no,
point
I
in
get
time.
that,
Yeah.
but you're talking about we're gonna be short. Are we counting in the fact that we're gonna collect twice as much for a little bit here?
I see what you're saying, but it would potentially just be a couple months. So when we
It
look
could
at the
be-
entire
I think
year.
it'd be from day one for probably 6-9 months if there's projects just started. There's a bunch of projects, they're getting permits in today to beat the deadline. They're not gonna come online for a year. So we're gonna, up to that year frame, I think we're gonna kind of double dip and, just on timing.
Well, the question then becomes, if they don't proceed for a year, how does that affect whatever window they've got for a refund? I mean, it's just,
No, I'm talking
Oh,
about,
the new ones, right, the new ones, right?
the new ones are gonna pay the day they get it, and then we got the whole issue of whether
The
we give
old
them a
ones come
time.
in later.
I'm talking about the ones that are already permitted, that have the ability to pay at completion, and there's homes going all over the place, and buildings and everything else, which we're gonna collect. Somebody's gonna come in October 1st and pay money for a brand-new project, and then we're gonna collect one on a project that started last October on the same day.
My biggest concern is to make sure that during this county's computer problem, that we understand that there is a way for us to know the number, and I guess Rhonda would probably know the answer, I didn't mean to catch you off guard. That we know the number. Like, when it's all said and done and they say their computers are working now, we're not gonna be losing things through the cracks. We're gonna say, no, this development didn't pay, this home didn't pay, this one didn't pay, and we're back, and we're gonna get that collection.
Every single structure, I think, that is built in this county would have power, and they all collect impact fees, and they're pretty good at it. You've got to cross-check from, you'd have to gather all your utility. I mean, you got KUA, OUC, Duke, or whoever they are now.
But there has to be some record of the last 5 months of houses that have been certified for occupancy, correct? I mean, that's a public record. It's not gonna be an issue for us to go back and make these collections. Even though we're only collecting some at this point,
We don't know what we're missing right now.
but we will.
Right.
Yeah, I would say to
We'll be
Ricky's
able to
point
go
though, is
back.
there any concern of our ability to really make sure that that's tight, that nothing will?
Yeah, what I'm saying, I mean, obviously, there's houses that have been CO'd at this point
We don't have money.
that we haven't been paid for, is that correct?
Is it,
Yes.
And have they paid? Like, they're gonna be living in these homes 5 months and then somebody's going back and they've had mortgages, they've had all this done, and they haven't paid yet?
No, it has to have been paid.
Well,
Paid the county, we haven't gotten the
Yeah,
money.
they paid the
Yeah,
county.
we haven't gotten paid.
we-
The county's
That seems to be
collected.
the question, whether the
Well,
county knows.
well, has the county made the collection?
I would,
Yeah, that's
I
what
would-
I'm concerned about.
given the vignettes we've heard from some people, I wouldn't represent everybody's paid, and I wouldn't represent that all of it's been transferred. Part of what, and we've talked, Ron and I, about, is saying to the county, all right, we'd like a printout of every CO that's been issued from X date to X date, and you just match it up. And they told us they're doing that. They're going back and making sure everybody's paid. Now, I think once it comes in, we'll be pretty sure, comfortable that we pretty much got it. But if we see anything, we can literally go back and say, we want to match up dollar for dollar.
I know, but this is important.
I know, I'm not trying to rush you. I'm just saying.
I just want to make, and what scares me is there's some large-scale development going on in the last 5 months.
Kindred?
That hasn't paid, and then all of a sudden they're gonna say, well, you can't go back and collect on these 400 homes. I mean, that would be ridiculous, but yes, we can, I guess. I mean, there is a mechanism in place, correct?
Well, the development order would deal with that, would it
Yeah,
not?
but the next board meeting is on, that we have
The
is.
20th?
June 19th?
June
19th.
19th.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, on that date, we'll give you a complete report
Okay.
back that they have it fixed, they don't have it fixed.
I would appreciate that.
Here's what we're worried about or not worried about,
Yeah.
a comprehensive.
Because it does concern me that when you keep pushing this back 4 or 5 months, I mean, people are getting their COs, they're moving into the homes, and if they haven't paid, somebody's gonna have to go
They're not
back and
gonna have,
collect.
they're not gonna have a $10,000 check to write.
No, they're gonna have to go refinance a mortgage. I mean, what is the mechanism in
We
place
get-
to force someone to do that?
We get monthly reports, our facilities are on the COs and that. It's just cross-checking, but we'll give you a complete update at the next meeting. And they know we're watching this very close. So Don was very much on top of it, saying, we're gonna make sure everybody's paid.
Okay.
My opinion is that the onus would be on the developer or the builder and not the homeowner anyway, because it's their responsibility to pay that cost. It just gets passed along, embedded in the cost of the overall structure or home to the
Yep.
consumer. But Rhonda, you live in this space every day. Are you concerned about what we're talking about, or you think that the process would be tight enough, even though it's problematic right now, that at the end, this is all going to be okay?
are getting monthly reports. We see every permit, and then over the following, typically 3 to 6 months, depending on who the builder is, that report regenerates with the CO aligned to it. We're not the only one who got caught up in this. The mobility fees, the fire fees, and the parks and recs. So everybody wants their
They gotta
money.
get it fixed.
It's just unfortunately due to the crashing of the system, they're having to do a lot of manual inputting. So the money is coming, my understanding probably over the next 2 or 3 months, but they can't backdate and say this should have been February and this should have said March, so where we saw the lull. And like Sarah says, for a couple of months, we'll kind of see these anomalies, and then it's all gonna wash back out. But for a projection standpoint, those anomalies will throw us off because you have the dips and then the raises, but I feel confident we're gonna get the money.
But we are operating under President Reagan's position of trust but verify.
Amen. Oh, Ronnie, you gotta love him. So who do I salute?
Board, as we begin to move forward,
No, salute
and I'm gonna
Brad,
turn it back over to Sarah.
You know who, he invoked the name.
And look at Jay's shirt today. I'm gonna turn it back over to
Salute
Sarah.
Jay.
Please, stand up when you do it, though.
Only 2 things
Remember,
could've
we
got me
only
excited.
do only have
Ronald
about
Reagan,
10
Jesus
minutes
Christ.
left, so if we want Sarah to get done, we do have 10 minutes, and then we do have another workshop behind this one. So keep that in mind before you ask questions like I just did.
Actually, we are almost done that. The last couple of pages in your packet are the detail on specific capital line items. So just to point out, 2-5, $3 million that we're allocating to safety and security for next year. That was intended to be about $1 million a year of sales tax money. We are gonna go through a county-wide process of rekeying locks. So that's why you'll see on page 2-5, $2 million in there specifically for that locks project.
But this isn't just rekeying the locks. This is actually changing locks so that we'll be able to lock them from the inside and the outside of a doorway to increase our safety and security.
So it's not eating locks.
It's not.
And you can see the other items that are allocated for safety and security on page 2-5. And then as we move forward, we have the carryover budget in here for technology, and then the new budget for technology. Same as we move forward for the maintenance and renovation, the carryover, and then the new projects. So we've gone through the prioritization process for next year's requests, and held a contingency in there, so as things come up during the year, we're going ahead and holding that contingency back so we won't have to come to you every time we need to add a project. And then on page 2-10 and 2-11 are the deferred maintenance carryover and new projects, and those are the sales tax projects. So 2-11 is what the new sales tax projects will be adding for next year. And as I had mentioned previously, we were able to move some additional work up sooner. So we've added some extra money in that area just to get some additional deferred maintenance work done sooner. The very last page, 2-12, is our debt capacity analysis. You've seen this before, just an update. We've done the last couple of refundings that we were eligible for. So nothing on the table right now as far as refundings that we'll be doing in the near future. And no intention to issue any additional COPs. Our most recent debt issue was the sales tax bonds related to the sales tax program, which is not reflected here. So this is strictly showing how much of our property tax revenue that's coming in is tied up in debt payments. And you can see at the bottom of that 2019 column, we're at about 44% and going down. So we're in good shape there as far as our debt leverage against our property tax revenues.
Dr. Pace, will you grab me on page 2-5 when we're done?
And that's actually
Yes, sir.
the end of what I had to present, so I just want to open it up for any questions.
Sarah, I missed the beginning, as you know, on the line item. There was one other, well, there's actually 2 other that I asked about, and you may have covered them prior to me getting here. One was a very small dollar amount, but a significant increase that had to do with the Administrators Academy and what the change was there.
We did talk about that. Mr. Straker actually has some ideas to revamp the Administrators Academy for next year.
Change the venue, and I'll be happy to talk to you about that. I've also got the information that you wanted about the other administrative line item in terms of
Promotions.
promotions. Yep, I've got that for you.
And then the last one, which I couldn't find, but we talked about it, was the digital media center piece.
Oh yeah, and I did not mention that to high school. What's that under?
Digital library, digital
Yes.
classroom
Yes.
library. Mr. Clark or Mr. Curran?
I just wanted a little bit of information on what it was, just so I understand a
What
little
it
bit
does, it
better.
gives us a lot more access for our high school students, all the high schools. We were going to move a little more digital with NEO and Categorical, and we wanted to make equivalency across. When it comes to some of the nonfiction articles and things that we have for the students, there's unlimited access. Instead of only being able to check out one copy of it to one student or here, every student has access. So it can be put in and added into the curriculum plans and so forth. It also has a communication with Office 365 where students can take things from those articles, bring it right into some of their works that they're writing or presenting. It just really bumps us up a little bit more with the digital aspect of connecting and moving forward with using digital for technology.
If I remember correctly, it's strictly nonfiction text,
It is
correct?
nonfiction, and it's vetted. It also is, it's like just taking out some of your nonfiction books and space that takes and going digital and giving the students a lot more access to it beyond the media center.
And to your point at the beginning of what you said, this would be countywide, and the expenditure accounts for
It's
countywide.
got us a good deal. We're also, with NEO and Tahoka, we're able to take their academies that they have, and we can actually get that nonfiction stuff grouped according to that. So if a student that has a specialty area picks that, it'll actually pull them and already make it a quicker and easier access to those materials.
And so as we go in this direction, I imagine, and I'm speculating, this is step one in a multi-step process of digitizing a lot of our materials that exist within our media centers.
It'll
Is
give
that
us
correct?
much easier access within the media center and beyond.
And so we'll begin to compress the number of books that are available in the
Correct.
media centers and
Correct.
instead rely more upon digital content, and that's something that we plan to continue to do more and more over time.
That is right. Right now, we currently as well have been purchasing with some of the money that we've had, ebooks. Our ebooks purchased each year has done this, and my supervisor, we've been purchasing more and making it available to all the schools. Instead of each school buying their own, we're putting it in and making it available as an Osceola School District library as well. So, and that's fiction as well as nonfiction.
And with the licensing and the access, it also, I imagine, has analytics that we can track from utilization, adoption, and all of that, so that we can see whether or not we're getting the same use across the district with the digital content compared to the physical
This
content.
will be our first time to really do that, and yes, we'll be able to pull data.
It'll actually be easier.
We've
I
been
imagine
doing,
so.
we've been tracking data from our media centers, like ebook checksouts and things like that now, and that's where we're trending.
Thank you.
We still have the plan in place for Kelvin to be screening all nonfiction articles before the students read.
Want to make sure you bring pandas and people.
He'll have quite a few.
Copy in every school. I'm just messing around.
The board, is there any further questions?
Nice job, sir.
All right, so we will adjourn this workshop, and how about we
You're
take
part of
that
that,
5
buddy.
minutes? Can we do that?
Minutes, okay.
5 minutes?
The construction agenda is pretty full, but yeah,
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
You never heard of